Hi everyone, so this is guided practice on what we were learning in class today regarding parallel lines and angle pairs. So today we learned that there was a relationship when we had two parallel lines. We use those arrowheads to indicate parallel lines. When they're cut by a transversal, so this line right here, this P is the transversal, and we can see that the following angles are congruent. Okay, so angle 1 is congruent to angle 5 because they're corresponding angles. Angle 4 is congruent to angle 8 because they're corresponding angles. They're in the same corresponding location relative to the transversal, to 8. And then angle 2 is congruent to angle 6. Angle 3 is congruent to angle 7. Those are all corresponding angles. And because of all of this, you are then going to also see that angle 4 is congruent to angle 6. Those are alternate interior angles. And angle 3 is congruent to angle 5. Those are alternate interior angles. And then we also learned about same side interior angles. Same side interior angles. So that would be 4 and 5. Remember, they're on the same side of the transversal on the interior of the parallel lines, and they're supplementary. So angle 4 plus angle 5 would equal 180, and angle 3 plus angle 6 would equal 180 degrees. All right, now a couple things that we didn't get to that I wanted to talk about. Sometimes it can be really hard to see these angles. So the alternate interior angles, these guys, actually, if you think about it a little bit carefully, if you look for a shape of a Z with the parallel lines, watch. If I create a Z with the parallel lines, you can see that the angles within the Z are alternate interior angles. Now, it can be harder if I try to go the backward Z. I'll switch to blue here. If I go this way, it's still a Z, but it's kind of backwards. You'd have to flip it over, and it's a really flat. So I always tell students to look for the Z to help you, but what you have to really be clear on is that the top and the bottom of the Z have to be the parallel lines, and that inner line has to be the transversal for you to see that. Now, there's some other relationships that we're going to look for as well. But for now, let's look for Z's and see if we can find alternate interior angles. Why? Well, because they're congruent. All right, so let's look at an example. So it says that the measure of angle 2 is 75 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and mark my 75 degrees. Okay, immediately then I know that angle 2 is 75 degrees because they're vertical angles. All right, and I know that angle 1 would have to be 105 because they form a linear pair. All right, so that means that angle 3 is 105. Now I look at and I see those parallel lines, so I want to look for alternate interior angles. So I'm going to find my Z. Let me switch to yellow, and I'm going to switch to a thinner line like that. Okay, so I'm going to see. I highlight angle 4, and if I continue it until I get to the parallel line, I can see the Z. And so that tells me that angle 6 has to also be 75 degrees. And that allows me to say that 8 is 75 degrees, 5 is 105, and 7 is 105 as well. So you can see, if you can remember one relationship, the other relationships are going to come based on linear pairs and vertical angles, okay? They do get harder though, so let's look. All right. So here we've got double sets of parallel lines. Now you may notice that this has 2 sets of arrowheads and this only has 1. And that's because sometimes if we have multiple sets of parallel lines, we need to know which ones are marked parallel to each other. So M and N are parallel and P and Q are parallel. So it says the measure of angle 3 is 102. It wants us to find every other angle we can. And for now, we're gonna disregard the postular theorem because we're gonna be talking about that in class, okay? All right, so I know angle 1 is 102, and that tells me that angle 2 is 78 and angle 4 is 78. So I look for my Z. I'm gonna actually switch to red here, and I can see there's a Z right there. So that tells me 6 is 78, 5 is 102, 8 is 78, and 7 is 102. But now I've got to kind of look sideways. And if these are my parallel lines, this line, this green line actually kind of behaves like a transversal, right? So if I look for the Z sideways, let me get a highlighter. And I'll look for purple, and I want to make it a little thinner. If I look like this way, you can see the Z there. So that angle 3 would have to be congruent to angle 9 because they're alternate interior angles. 2 and 10 are corresponding angles. You might have seen that as well. And that, again, helps me find all of the angles over here. And then I can see that P and Q have the exact same relationships. 5, 6, 7, and 8 have the exact same relationships as 13, 14, 16, and 15. So 78, 102, 78, and 102. All right, now just a reminder, the Z gives you alternate interior angles, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other angle relationships like corresponding angles. All right, so angle 5 would be 102. Angle 6 would be 78. Let's make sure we use degrees. Angle 11 would be 102. Angle 7 would be 102. Angle 15 would be 102. And angle 14 would be 78. All right, guys, I'm going to stop there on that one, but you're going to pick back up on the next video. Have a great day.